My name is Folu Olatona. I'm a professor of public health at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. I'm conducting this tutorial for undergraduates and postgraduate students at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. The topic of this tutorial is how to write the discussion of a project or dissertation. It can be useful for anyone who wants to write the discussion of a research. Discussion is an important part of every research. It must have a system. You must have a system for writing it. There are two major parts: the discussion of the results and the discussion of the limitations. What is the purpose of the discussion? If you know the purpose, it will be easy for you to write well. The purpose is to explain and evaluate your findings, explain the meaning, the importance, and relevance of each result. Make sure that the flow is from the meaning to importance. In other words, what does this result mean? What exactly does it mean? You must write the interpretation. Why does it matter? Why is it important? Or how is it relevant? The importance, the relevance must follow the meaning of the result. And thereafter, you need to explore the relationship with existing knowledge. How does your research situate in the body of knowledge on that topic? Please don't introduce new data or analysis in the discussion session. Don't include tables, bullet points. Always write your research in prose form. The length of the discussion should be appropriate for the purpose. Since we're discussing dissertation, usually more than 100 pages, it's important to write as much as 15% of that length as your discussion. So if you have 120-page dissertation, you cannot write 6 pages of discussion. You should write more than 15 pages of discussion. In fact, if you can get 18 pages, that would be fantastic. But it's not just enough to fill the spaces with junks. Ensure that what you're doing is discussing the meaning of each result, the importance, the relevance, and how it relates with other research. Before you start writing, let there be a preparation note. Have a note that is like preparation to write. Bring all the research questions or objectives for the purpose of the undergraduates and postgraduate students who spend just 1 year. You may not be able to conduct an intervention study. Therefore, let me refer to your objectives. List your objectives on that preparation page. Pull the key results only the key results. What are the major answers to your major objectives? Those are the key results. In other words, think about how to answer each objective. Think about the answer to each objective. That result, pull it out from the results section and put it on this your preparation sheet. Remember to include effect sizes. Remember to include the theme if it's a qualitative data. You should even include p-values when you copy that result. But please, don't copy and paste all the results from the table. Some people copy everything on the table. No, think of your objectives and ensure that you are picking the results that answer the objectives. For example, if you're studying knowledge, attitude, and practice, the prevalence of good knowledge or the level or the proportion of people who have good knowledge is the answer to the first objective. The proportion of people who have positive attitude is the answer to the second objective. And the proportion of people who have good practice is the answer to the third objective. Many people would explore the association between different factors like social demographic factors, knowledge, attitude, and the practice. Usually the practice would be the outcome variable, and you want to explore the factors that are associated with this outcome variable. That would be your objective 4. Note unexpected findings, sensitivity analysis. Note the unexpected findings, sensitivity analysis, and study limitations. Don't ignore the unexpected findings. I remember sometimes ago, while conducting my PhD research, I noticed an unexpected finding. Instead of the intervention reducing a certain variable, the variable increased after intervention. And I needed to find out the reason, only to discover that during pandemics such as COVID, which was my experience then, that particular variable tend to increase because of staying indoor. Though it increased amongst the study population, the intervention group, the rate of increase among the control group was much higher, and that was good enough to prove that the intervention was effective. Don't ignore the unexpected findings. Find the reasons for them. The opening paragraph, now that you have the list of different things you want to use as ingredients in your notes, start writing the discussion. The opening paragraph of that discussion should be on the major objective, the answer to the major objective. Remember that in your objective section, you have general objective and specific objectives. So the opening sentence or paragraph to your discussion should be the answer to your major objective. For example, you can have a statement such as, this study found that knowledge was low, attitude was good, and practice was poor. That's a simple statement that captures the major objectives. You can also use a statement such as, we observed an association between knowledge and practice. If your study is on qualitative data, you can make a statement such as, qualitative analysis revealed 3 dominant themes, and state the themes. So that opening paragraph should capture the whole objective, the major objective, and the answer to it. Thereafter, pick each result and explain. Translate statistics or themes into practical meaning. In other words, what you have found in this research, what is the public health significance? This result, what is the clinical relevance? So you need to think deeply of the public health significance. For example, if you have a research on nutritional status of adolescents in Nigeria, and you discover that the nutritional status of adolescents, most of them are within the normal weight range, but 25% are obese. That's alarming. You cannot say that, 25% is below 50, therefore the prevalence of overweight and obesity is low. You need knowledge, knowledge of the particular area you are researching into, to be able to interpret the results appropriately. Another example I can give right away is the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding. The World Health Organization and UNICEF expect, the recommendation from them is that 90% of all mothers should breastfeed their babies exclusively. If you found out that 35% of mothers in the neighborhood or community where you conducted the research practice exclusive breastfeeding, you cannot say that is a good figure. It's much more below the recommendation. That interpretation, the meaning of that result should be appropriate. It's low. It's not fair. Some people will say it's fair. No, it's not fair. It's low, because in view of the expected is too low. If less than 1/4 of people have knowledge of something that is very important, very basic to their health, then it's poor. That's the way you should explain the meaning of that result in view of public health significance. State the relevance to clinical practice. If it's something that is relevant to clinical practice, you need to state how relevant it is to clinical practice. So when you have explored the meaning of the results, the public health significance, the relevance, how important it is, the next thing is to situate your results within the body of knowledge. Situate that result within the literature. Get at least 3 to 5 past studies on the subject and compare and contrast your study with the past studies. That's why it's very important to write a very good literature review. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and get other videos. The video on literature review is available. Just search for it on this channel and listen to it again so that you can adjust your literature review or to be able to earn a very good score. Where do you agree, diverge, or extend? When comparing with other studies, you need to find out where your study agree with other studies, where it diverges from other studies, or is it extended? So if it agrees, what extra does your work add to the body of the literature? You cannot just say this study agrees with other studies and keep quiet. You need to make it clear what extra, what other information does your work add to the body of literature. As you compare with these 5 other studies or more, you need to also find out if it's different. If it's different, you need to offer reasons for the differences. For example, the difference may be because you studied a different population or used a different method of measurement. It can also be because of a difference in context, in dose, in methods of analysis. You need to think of the reasons for the differences and write the reasons. You can use statements such as our findings are consistent with, if your studies agree with other studies. And if it's different, you can use statements such as in contrast to other studies and state how it is in contrast. Please don't just conclude that it's similar because other studies have quoted the word low to describe their own, and you also think your own is low. You need to look at the percentages, the proportions, and be very sure that they are similar before you conclude that they are similar. Ensure that you reference all the past studies that are used in this comparison. And when you are writing the possible reasons why they are different, you should also quote past studies to justify your explanation. Whatever you write in research or manuscripts, if you are writing a manuscript, whatever you write in your dissertation, in your project, or any form of scientific writing must be backed up by appropriate references. Ensure that you follow the reference style for your department. For the Department of Community Health, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, we use the Vancouver referencing style, and this referencing style does not allow you to mention names of authors in the body of the work. What you should do is to cite the number and ensure that these references are properly listed at the end of the work. After you have compared with other research, you need to propose mechanism or explanations. Present plausible pathways. Use theory. In literature review, you explore the theories that are related to your research. For example, for health studies in the medical parlance, we have different theories that are related to health research, such as theory of planned behavior, socio-ecological model, and others. Employ them while explaining the reasons for your findings. You can use the theory of planned behavior as a reason for certain findings that you obtain in your research on practice. Starters of such can be a potential mechanism is, or you can say from a behavioral standpoint, this theory, this relates to this result. Address validity and robustness. You need to discuss bias in your discussion. It can be selection, information bias, or confounding variables. You should also state their likely direction, their magnitude. Summarize sensitivity analysis and whether they change the conclusion. Sometimes there can be a bias, but you would have controlled for that bias and does not affect your conclusion. In such situations, you can use starters such as results remain robust after adjusting for this bias. For example, if you want to study mothers of under 5 and their knowledge, attitude, and practice of complementary feeding, it's possible to study mothers of under 5. It's also possible to limit it to mothers of children between 6 months and 2 years. So what do? Since you know that this recall bias is possible, you can decide to limit the children that you will use to children between 6 months and 2 years. So if you study mothers of children below 2 years, then while reporting or in your discussion, you will state that to deal with recall bias, you decided to use children between 6 months and 24 months. So in conclusion or in your discussion, you would mention that the results have been modified, they've been improved by using those children. Because if it was children below 5 years, the mothers may not remember all the things that they practiced some 4 years before. So you have adjusted for that recall bias. You have dealt with it. So any bias that is possible in your work, you should deal with it at the level of design. And when discussing, you should mention how you dealt with it. And some that you might not have dealt with properly, you will need to indicate as a form of limitation. And that brings me to the next point. After you have discussed your results properly, explaining the meaning, the importance, the relevance, the next thing is to discuss the strengths and limitation. Start with one or two major strengths, discuss them thoroughly. That's what your study is adding to the body of knowledge. The juice in your work, that's what makes your work special. You should not be quiet about it. Let it be clear. If other people have been studying knowledge, attitude, and practice of breastfeeding, and your study is on exclusive breastfeeding, you may now want to tell the whole world that your study is on exclusive, not just breastfeeding. So you need to think about what is special, what is the strength of your study. Then you discuss the limitation. Limitation states how this limitation affects the interpretation of your results. Please don't just list several limitations. The limitations you mention, think about how you try to overcome them. And if you cannot overcome them, that limitation will be a precursor, it will lead you to the recommendation that you will make in the recommendation session. For example, if your study is a cross-sectional descriptive study like most undergraduates and master's dissertation that is just for 1 year will be, then you should state the limitation that your work is cross-sectional design. That's a limitation. It cannot ascertain causality between a particular variable and another variable. So if you are studying knowledge and practice, you cannot make a statement that low knowledge is responsible for low practice. That's causality. The best you can do in such a study that is cross-sectional is to state that there's an association. You cannot talk about causality. So that means that study is limited. It cannot ascertain cause and effect. And the solution is to have another research that will be a prospective design. So if somebody has the time and is able to do a study using a prospective design, that will be the strength of that study, because that kind of study will not be done commonly. That will be the strength of that study. Or if somebody is able to do an intervention study, the fact that there's an intervention that has achieved something significant, it's a strength of that study. The next thing is the closing paragraph. So state one paragraph, one tight paragraph that re-answers the main question, notes caveats, and states the take-home implication. You can start such a paragraph with "in summary," and then you bring all the major findings together and synthesize them. Don't just write knowledge is 25%, attitude is this, practice is that. No, you need to synthesize them. For example, if practice is low and knowledge is high, you need to say, despite the high level of knowledge, practice was low. That means that knowledge did not translate to practice. It did not affect the practice. It just at the level of head knowledge. It did not change the behavior. And it could be the other way around. Knowledge could be low and practice is high. So you need to synthesize all the results and mention that despite the low knowledge, practice was high. This is very important. The closing paragraph is very important for the discussion. Please avoid these common pitfalls. Don't repeat the entire results section. Some people would make comments on every item on the table and pull them together and take them to the discussion section. This is not right. Avoid overstating causality from observational data. Avoid listing several limitations. You don't earn mark or score for writing several limitations. Just mention the few that you can explain the sense of impact on inference. Avoid mentioning more research will be needed. Think about the specific research that is needed and state it. And then don't ignore unexpected findings. If there's any unexpected finding, make sure you report it. At this point, I'd like to close this video by saying, have a checklist and check the checklist before you submit to your supervisor. So I want to give you a few tips on what should be on such a checklist. The first paragraph answers the main question in plain language. Have you done that? Tick it on your checklist. Results have been interpreted for meaning, not relisted. Clear positioning of the results versus key literature. Situating the results within the literature, comparing and contrasting your results with past studies, and stating what is your conclusion. Ensure that the references are properly cited. In Vancouver referencing style, which is recommended for medical work, just cite the number of the reference and quote as appropriate in the reference list. Don't write names within the body of the work. That's used in Harvard referencing by social scientists. Mechanisms discussed and plausible. Check. Have you discussed the mechanism, the possible reasons for your results? If you have done that, tick the checklist. Biases have been named with expected direction or magnitude. Have you discussed the biases? Generalizability boundaries. Have you mentioned the generalizability? If your study was on urban students, then you need to state that the results cannot be generalized over students in rural areas. Have you done that? State the generalizability. Actionable implications for stakeholders. You need to discuss actionable implications. What is the implication of your results? Have you done that? Check the checklist. Specific future research suggestions should be taken to your recommendation. This brings me to the end of this video on discussion. I wish you success in your dissertation. Bye.